think. Okay. Yes. Here we go.
You know, Randy, I reported 4 US presidential campaigns. I found them, the first couple, I found fun. It was like reporting some wonderful circus. I'm now exhausted. It's like a tsunami every 4 years. Those of us outside the United States, we don't even have a mail-in vote, so we can't influence the thing. But so my reaction is, I'm just glad it's over, or appears to be over. But there's only one result, and that is we've all got another US president. Yep. That's all we need to say. Doesn't matter what the name is. Apparently his name is Joe.
Good guy, Joe.
That's a friendly name.
Good guy.
It was Donald. That was a friendly name.
Yeah.
But, you know, I mean, seriously, Biden's record is unsurprisingly the record of a man who is the embodiment of the system. That was the difference between him and Trump for me. Trump was a caricature of the system. Biden was the embodiment of the system. But in terms of wars, I mean, Obama is he's the champion. 7 wars. Now, he's a nice guy, or is meant to be a nice guy. I don't know. So, but we end up with the US president. That's my reaction, and I'm, you know, you cross your fingers then. I've got to this stage in life and have not been blown to bits by a US president dropping something from the sky on me. That is almost a miracle.
So the late, great John Pilger, that's a clip from the show I worked on for a couple of years, Randy Credico's Assange Countdown to Freedom. And I thought with everything that's going on in the world, and we've got a great panel here of libertarians, I figured kind of an anti-war then was a good way to go. And I was actually looking for a clip of Colleen Rowley, which I'll play another time. And she's talking about an article she wrote, The Recipe Concocted for Perpetual War. And then I stumbled across that. So I thought it's a little bit of humor from Pilger. He was really funny. But I truly believe that if we had, as required in learning in our schools, we had Pilger documentaries and Stephen Kinzer books, required reading, it would be a different country and a different world. So I'll toss it to you, Matt, and let you go around and we can let everyone introduce.
Thanks, Kelly, and thanks everyone for joining us. This is our 20th?
20th, yep.
Our 20th edition, so a bit of a milestone for candidates for Assange for this year. Thanks everyone for watching and welcome to you all. If we could just go around and just introduce yourselves a bit about who you are, why you're running, where you're running, and of course why you on a program called Candidates for Assange. So John, you're in the box directly above me, so please let us know a bit about yourself.
All right. Well, I am John Thomas. I am the Libertarian candidate for the United States Senate in the state of Pennsylvania. I am pretty much a lifelong Pennsylvania. I was born here in Pennsylvania. I did spend up until I was 11 or 12 years old. I lived just across the border in Maryland. But since then, I've been in Pennsylvania, unlike another candidate who's running. But I just love liberty. I love talking about liberty. I am a career educator. And what I see the role of a libertarian candidate for a statewide office or a federal office as is really a position for education, to educate people about how liberty rather than tyranny is the answer for a lot of what society faces. I really want to push a message of how liberty can help bring peace, not only peace on an international level, which is the topic of the show today, but even peace on a neighborhood level. A lot of times, a lot of the anger and vitriol we experience in our country is because neighbors want to lord the government over their other neighbors, and that just leads to a lot of ill feeling and a less peaceful interactions than what we have. So peace on an international level, peace on a local level can be brought about through liberty and more prosperity as well, because whenever we're not expending resources bombing people in 40 different countries throughout the world, we can have those resources, maintain those resources here at home, and that helps to bring prosperity to places like Pennsylvania.
Great, thanks, John. And that's a really first of all, we've got an all libertarian panel tonight, I think. But really interesting what you said there about this being on the local level and neighbors lording the government over their neighbors. And of course, anyone who's read 1984 knows what that can look like, right? So appreciate you being here, John. And Rebecca, going clockwise, you are next.
Oh, you're still muted.
Technology.
Yep.
My name's Rebecca Whiting. I'm running for U.S. Senate in Minnesota. My background is I'm a mom. I have a family. We homeschool. We have a farm. I have a bakery business. I got involved in the Libertarian Party, mostly through the progression of the lockdowns in Minnesota, which in Minnesota were rather draconian. Like for years we're just forced to have businesses closed and couldn't eat in a restaurant and that kind of stuff. And that is really kind of at that point, which kind of spurred me into action. But further back, I am an Army veteran. I was in 2 tours to Iraq as a combat medic. So I've always seen the system for what it is, because of my experiences when I was in Iraq, and especially as a medic, being in the thick of stuff, right? So I was out in the line doing, missions with engineers and sometimes even the infantry battalions, even as a female. And so during very key points of the war too. So I was in Ramadi in the Al Anbar province in 04-05. And if you know your history of the Iraq war, that was kind of when things were, pretty hot. And then later I was in Baghdad during the surge, and, like I said, both times as a medic. So I came out of that just very, never having anything but a very jaded sense of what the government could be, giving unrestrained power, no accountability, those kinds of things. And I really after that, it took me a long time to get to a point where I could even come on to a place like this, or even, talk about my story in public. And that's kind of, even though the lockdowns are kind of, that, an event that was just okay, you've got to do something. But really that background in the military and in the Army and in Iraq just kind of propelled me into being who I am today and for what I stand for, because I know how far the government will go against a people that, it's trying to spread democracy to. So, and having seen that firsthand. So, I'm running for U.S. Senate in Minnesota. We really needed, for us, this is a ballot access race. We had to have somebody to run. And because of my military background, I got approached to be the candidate for this year. So I'm running against Amy Klobuchar, who's kind of, a big name in politics. But this is an opportunity for us to be able to spread a message, especially an anti-war kind of a message that is so not mainstream, So gives me a platform to be able to do that from the perspective of being a combat veteran. So here I am.
Great. Well, thank you for joining us, Rebecca. And yes, certainly, where you were in Iraq, if people are not familiar, Ramadi and Baghdad during those years, both those places, really incredibly difficult. I was fortunate never to have to be in either of those cities. But what you said, just to pick up on what you said, to tie this into what we're doing here, right? Where you said you saw the system for what it is. And I think any of us who were in those wars, we saw the beast up close. And then you get this point of either joining the beast and becoming the beast, or keeping yourself separated from it. And, this idea of what we're talking about here, First and Fourth Amendment being paramount for us, is because if we can't tell our stories, if people aren't free to read and to hear these stories, to learn about these stories, then we're truly under a tyranny. So thank you for joining us, and thank you for running. And Mike Coles is a veteran of this show a few times. Just in case we forget to tell you all are welcome back as often as you'd like to come back on. And Mike has been very gracious and has joined us a few times. So Mike, welcome back.
Thank you. You probably can do it for me now. It's we the people. Smaller government. The government doesn't need to be in our life, and our government does not need to be in the business of other nations. So it's really that simple.
Okay. Thanks, Mike. And Fina, thank you for joining us from Florida.
Yes. Hello. My name is Fina Benoan. I am running for U.S. Senate as a Libertarian here in the great state of Florida. This is my third run for office. It's my first run in the state of Florida. My first two races were in Hawaii, the first one being in 2020 during the great lockdowns in the most oppressive state in the country, the great state of Hawaii, right? And I got involved I feel like my story's already been told in a combination of ways between the other guests. I was in the military as well. And, I knew the system was kind of messed up, even though before I joined the military, because I grew up poor. And usually for people as poor as I was, the only way to get out of that systematic poverty is to join the military. And that's what I did. And I don't regret it. I'm not going to apologize for my service in the military. I did what I had to do. I'm out now, and I'm trying to serve my country again. I'm running on more freedom, less government. That's the main issue. Everything else underneath, however it happens, if I get elected, is all great, all wonderful. I'm running against one of the most disliked people in Washington, who I'm going to just let you guys do the research. I'm not going to spend my time bad-mouthing him. So I am very anti-taxes. And probably the reason why I'm on here is you guys asked me to be on here. And part of that is about the free speech. Part of that's about the libertarian ideas of upholding the Constitution. And that's not just a libertarian idea. That's an oath that a lot of us that's on this show right now took to defend and uphold the Constitution of the United States of America. And I don't know about you guys, but I didn't renounce that oath. And so every time I go through the TSA, I feel like I am absolutely being searched unwarranted. Like, I think it's absolutely an atrocity that we have. Well, not quite atrocity. I mean, we're veterans of wars here. But I think that it's a smack in the face of everything that we fought for, that we would have to pay, that we can pay them and the TSA a little fee to keep our shoes on. And I just think that's wrong. I think that this there's a lot of illegal surveillance that's been going on that we've known about, and folks that have been talking about it for decades that's been happening. All they've gotten is, ridicule. And we are now waking up thanks to people like Julian Assange Edward Snowden, we are waking up to the reality that this was always happening. This was always something that's been happening our entire lifetime. Everyone that's in this call, probably their entire lifetime, we've been surveillanced. And that's wrong. It is against the U.S. Constitution.
Thank you, Peter. I'm one of those who pay that fee, right, to get through TSA, quicker, right? And so happily willing to give up my rights for convenience. And we've gotten in 20 episodes we've done, we've hit on this sometimes about how we can be manipulated into giving up not just what's granted to us as natural rights, right? These things that the government doesn't give it to us. The government doesn't give us free speech. The government doesn't give us privacy or right.
Now it's to the point where only poor people have to take off their shoes.
Right, exactly.
Only poor people, they're going to get groped.
So you now have it, right? We've talked about this before, and we'll get into this tonight, maybe, this idea of having a tiered system. Some citizens are better than the others, as well as the idea of that you can sell rights for profit. So we can get this idea of this connection, this nexus between the corporations and the government. But Kelly, I'll let you take it back over. Oh, you're muted.
Sorry. I just wanted to say, to bring it back to WikiLeaks for a minute. I'm not a veteran, and I'm someone that I freely admit I was really clueless about foreign policy. I'm college educated, and I did not learn all of this stuff until way into my adult years. And I think that we have had, like I mentioned at the top, and Colleen Rowley wrote about, we've had this recipe for perpetual war because people are in the dark and don't know. And there's been such a, keeping the truth about wars under wraps. And so without WikiLeaks, I think a lot of us would not have ever learned that.
Yeah, and that push for truth is so important, especially I think in this era, whenever we hear a lot of talk about misinformation and disinformation, and them wanting to regulate that, what the government defines as misinformation and disinformation. What we saw in Iraq with Chelsea Manning and Julian Assange is the government suppressing what everybody knew was the truth. So it has nothing to do with misinformation or disinformation or the truthfulness of something. It's the government wants to suppress anything that makes them look bad, regardless of the truthfulness of it. So anytime we give them the power to regulate anything that we say, we're giving them the power to suppress that truth.
Exactly. And I think, obviously libertarians have been kind of ahead of the game on this, right? But I think other people are now waking up to this as well. We have Greens and libertarians on here, but I think more and more Greens and independents are realizing that, what is really happening with the surveillance and attacks on our free speech. So I wanted to get into a bit, I always think about why, what's driving wars? We kind of know, you guys all know, we're not just spreading democracy, right? And there's so much of it is for profit. And I caught this really great interview. It's Vital Dissent, Pat McFarland's podcast with Kelly Vlahos. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's about a 3-minute clip. And actually I'm going to first play the 1-minute clip that is something she's referencing. She wrote an article, and then I'll go right into her clip on Pat's show. But it's really important about Palantir and what's going on with that.
So what do you think about the use of artificial intelligence, or lavender, by the IDF in identifying Hamas targets?
Look, I'm not, without going into all the I'm not on top of all the details of what's going on in Israel, because my bias is to defer to Israel. It's not for us to second guess everything, and I believe that broadly the IDF gets to decide what it wants to do, and that they're broadly in the right. And that's sort of the perspective I come back to. And if I fall into the trap of arguing you on every detailed point, I would actually be conceding the broader issue that the Middle East should be micromanaged from Cambridge. And I think that's just simply absurd. And so I'm not going to concede that point.
And John, before I go into this next one, yeah, I saw you shaking your head, and we've gotten into this on the last couple of shows. I think ever since Netanyahu was here and spoke in front of Congress and all the protests, just what is going on with, we're all waking up to this now, exactly how much money the AIPAC lobby is, using to interfere with our elections. But it gets even better. Here
the question was from a woman in the audience who asked him point blank how he felt about Israel using AI technology in its war in Gaza. And a lot of civilians were killed because, hey, they're with their families in their home, and many with extended families. So this woman in the audience was clearly asking about this because Peter Thiel was a co-founder of Palantir, which provides massive data streams to AI platforms for surveillance and targeting, just like the one I just described in Israel. Now, do we know that Palantir is supplying streams and the technology for the Lavender program? We don't know for sure, but we know that they have contracts with Israel to advance, quote unquote, their war effort. We know that because they told us back in January. So we're looking at Peter Thiel here, very uncomfortable. He's speaking to the Cambridge Union. He gets asked about AI technology killing civilians on the battlefield, and he doesn't know how to respond. Why? Because we know that Israel is a client of Peter Thiel's Palantir. We know that Peter Thiel and his co-worker or colleague, Alex Karp, have boasted about their assisting Israel in their war effort. Not only have they boasted in assisting, but they have basically said that Israel is in the right in what it's doing in Gaza. And he even said this as he stumbled and he bumbled and stuttered in trying to answer this question. He said, not only does he defer to Israel on these questions, but also that the IDF is in the right. That's an exact quote. So I felt the need to write about this, not just because of the optics that, you have somebody clearly feels uncomfortable, doesn't know how to answer a straightforward question about how his technology that he's been promoting for close to 20 years when it comes to the surveillance and the targeting and the data streams elements, doesn't know how to even speak for them when they're actually being used in this way. But also this idea that this guy who has been lumped in with the America First foreign policy crowd at times is saying that he defers to another country. He defers to Israel. And so I felt the need to write about this because it really does reflect this creepy reality that we have now, in which American defense contractors, major ones like Palantir, which have numerous contracts with the U.S. government, the U.S. military, and spy agencies, are deferring to other countries because their business goes across boundaries and into other countries, and now they're actually promoting other countries' war effort. There is no fealty to their own country on one hand, and there's a big fealty to on the other. And so I think this should be a major concern for anyone who is trying to promote some sort of policy of peace or restraint or realism back here in our own country.
So I'm going to toss it to you guys. What do you think?
Well, we know that the military-industrial complex, the corporate interests in Washington has incentive to keep the wars going. And I can't remember what the name of the contractors were that, where we were in Iraq, we had, I just can't remember the name of them. It's been a while. Anyways, but, they were setting up the DFACs and doing all this stuff on base. And then there are people back in the United States that own those corporations, right? So even though they're not dropping bombs, they're providing the basic needs for the bases to be able to function and for, soldiers to have their basic needs met. So like there's a lot of corporate interest in continuing the wars that honestly have they're not building the missiles or the bombs or the jets or, whatever it is. But still, we know that, greed can run very deep. And even people who didn't think that they would be caught up in that, when they're given a pile of money to be able to say, all you have to do is vote this way, or all you have to do is make this decision. Like there's a lot of people whose character, that's when like their own character flaws are going to be so much more obvious to them, right? So that's kind of, I don't know, I'm not even sure where I was originally going with that, but just that, the military industrial complex and the corporate interest in Washington, D.C., it runs so deep, like top to bottom, everybody's compromised. And how do you fix that at this point when you know that that's the case?
Hopefully getting people like you guys elected. Vina, please.
Yes. Yeah, I took notes. So that's just how I roll. All right. So first note that I took was about his backing out of the comments. He was backing out of questioning. And he's basically saying, it's not my job. It's not my responsibility. He's not taking any kind of, he's not taking any account of like any kind of human emotion. Like it would have taken zero effort to say that that's a horrible thing that's happening. Zero effort. And he didn't. And that gets into, when we're talking about AI killing people, right? We're in this time where we cannot afford to be on the sidelines playing the hear no, see no, speak no evil monkeys and letting AI take over and letting whoever just, create this AI and prompt it into this learning cycle of hating humans, right? And I'm an optimistic type person. I feel like AI has a bright and good future, but that's only if we have the capacity to teach it empathy. We have to teach empathy to AI. We're teaching it art right now, and I think that's a good thing because through art, all things can be learned, and that's just my opinion as an artist. And to what you guys were talking about, the war machine, right? So she was I'm sorry, I forgot the name and you guys took her off the screen.
It's okay. It's Kelly.
Rebecca. No, what Rebecca was saying.
Oh, what Rebecca said.
What she was saying about the war machine. She was naming off some corporations where she's talking about Raytheon. She's talking about Lockheed Martin. She's talking about General Dynamics. I've worked for them. And here's the thing. Those are all jobs. Making warheads, making rockets are jobs. And I'm in the great state of Florida right now. And there's another job out here in Florida and another job in California and another job in Texas as well that can do the same thing, but for the good of humanity. And that's building rockets to go to outer space instead of building rockets with warheads to send to foreign countries. We've got to redirect the mission and turn it outwards towards something productive because we've had a moral obligation from the moment we knew of our sun's expiration. We've calculated the data. We know it's going to happen. And it's not in our lifetime. It's not in our children's lifetime. It's going to take, it's many generations from now, but it's going to take many generations to get to where we need to be, which is off this planet, expanded out into a greater universe. And we've got to start now. We don't have a good excuse to be fighting each other when the reality is before we know it, because we won't be here, we'll be dead, we'll be long dead. But we've had the moral obligation to our future generations to work together to find a way to escape this peril. And that's how I want to kind of approach the issue of not just, ending wars, but I want to put a new beginning onto the future where we work together. And I'm not recreating the wheel. I'm not starting something that isn't already started. I'm refocusing it. That's what I would like to do. I'd like to refocus it because, like I said, those same jobs that put warheads on rockets to go to foreign countries could be putting rockets into outer space and setting up for the next generations, because the next generations, the future, the next blue collar job market that's going to blow up is going to be blue collar jobs in outer space. I'm a libertarian, so I can sound crazy if I want to. All right, folks. But I'm going to tell you, blue collar jobs in outer space, because we have to put the infrastructure out there. That means construction workers. That means electricians. That means plumbers. That means, of course, engineers. But a lot of things that we have here that's building and hands-on type jobs, we're going to need those in outer space. Our space station right now is deteriorating. It is time for it to come down. That's going to be in the next 10 years. Are we going to replace it? Are we going to put something better up there? These are things that I would like to see us focusing on and going towards, instead of sending our tax dollars over to these other foreign countries so they can go and off each other. I just don't think that's a valuable use of our tax dollars, especially when we don't have clean drinking water in the United States of America for all the states, So that's
I was just going to say that, Flint, I think, still doesn't have clean water. I know status quo.
Right. I know Mike wants to jump in here, but one thing, if I could throw it all out to you as well, what I'm hearing from you all, we got a libertarian panel tonight. And I think a lot of us who aren't libertarians, I'm on the other side of you all, I'm a green, but this idea that aren't libertarians, they're just against government and they think corporations should be allowed to do whatever they want. And the rules don't apply to them and they can just violate all of our freedoms because it's just one big free for all. Isn't that what you libertarians stand for? So if let Mike, please say what you want to say, but also too, if you all could kind of educate some of us more on terms of this libertarian thinking, because what we're hearing from you is not what a lot of us outside of the Libertarian Party are led to believe about what you all actually think and how you think about these things.
Yeah, I'll have to think about that. But war is humanity at its worst. And if America is a shining light on the hill to the world, we have to be agents of peace. There's no other path. There's no other way that we're going to remain a relevant nation, a leading nation in the world. So whatever it takes to get out ahead, every country should have the chance to have an open and honest friendship with the United States, no preconditions to talk. And it's all about talking and negotiating a degree of happiness among the nations. So I don't know. It seems so easy instead of spending trillions on munitions and piling up bodies.
Well, I keep this book on my desk because it just seems to keep coming up. But like you were talking about, the military, that's a job. So, there have to be solutions there. How do we translate all of the places in this country that are relying on these military jobs? How do we change that over into let's fix Flint? How do we, as candidates, do you have ideas of how we can do that?
Well, I'd like to play the stereotypical libertarian just for 1 second and give the only defense that I can think of. The only if you can't say something nice, you shouldn't say anything at all. For Peter Thiel here, he looked incredibly uncomfortable trying to defend this terrible policy. And I want people to look incredibly uncomfortable whenever they're being as evil as that. And I've seen so many politicians who just say what he was trying to say with a completely straight face and a silver tongue. I'm glad he looked uncomfortable, because you ought to feel dirty and filthy whenever you're trying to sell war and the genocide of a people the way that he was doing it. So, I does that sound nice enough towards that particular capitalist? But,
John Kelly will make clips of the show, and she puts them on TikTok and everything, and I think that's probably one of the clips she makes. That's
and you know what, go watch. I actually made a longer clip of Peter Thiel. Go watch that whole thing, because there's another segment that is it's atrocious what he says. But
it's pure
did you see
evil.
the whole thing?
Yeah, I did see the whole clip that you sent over to me, and it's astonishingly evil. The only credit I can give him is that he looked uncomfortable saying it.
Right, and that's because of all the people in the room. I mean, they had to, like, the woman sitting next to him is like, just ridiculing everybody for talking too much, and there's someone yelling, people are yelling about genocide in the background. So that public pressure absolutely makes a difference, because they had to lock down this room and only try to take friendly questions, which wasn't working. So that is good to see, for sure.
Yeah, and as far as the corporation question in general, I think that without the government propping up certain corporations, certainly the military corporations, we would see a lot. We wouldn't see such humongous corporations that we have. The free market would allow more competition. A lot of the regulation that exists isn't regulations that hinder corporations, but they're regulations that corporations support because it hinders their competition. If I'm a multi-billion-dollar company, I can afford a team of lawyers to sift through mountains of paperwork. But if I'm a startup company trying to compete against that billion-dollar company, I can't afford that team of lawyers. So what happens is regulatory capture, where insiders in that industry, inside the major corporations in the industry, take over the regulatory agencies of the government and then get in there and protect the established industry at the expense of up and coming industries. So as libertarians, yes, we're for limited government, but that doesn't mean that we're for unlimited power for industries.
Tag me in, John. I got your backup. I got your backup. Okay, let me tell you this right now, Matthew. I want to say this. You said that we may not be sounding as libertarian as you thought we were going to be sounding. That's because we're strategic and we think about things and we change with the environment. When I say we change with the environment, I'm going to lead up to the environment with what Matthew was talking about, or excuse me, John was talking about. The greatest example of the government overreach over what the people in the market want is plastic, which goes back to war too. Why is it that a packet of ketchup made out of plastic, made out of this material that is so, it lasts forever and it can be used for so many purposes? Why is it so cheap? Everything else that would be of that quality is expensive, but plastics are cheap and they're made. Plastic is made out of oil. Oil is another expensive substance as well. And this plastic is being subsidized, and the oil industry is being subsidized by our government, by our military security agents that are going over, they're stealing other countries' raw materials, they're taking over regimes, and then they're ensuring the safe transport of these oil pipelines. But the reality is, my generation, we want alternatives to plastic. We don't want single-use plastics, and there are so many government restrictions against any kind of new materials that, like hemp, for instance. Hemp, a great biodiverse material that can make almost probably everything plastic can make. Hemp can be used for as well to make these materials, but we shame hemp out of morality, and that's something the libertarians are against. The government being used to enforce morality, and the government being used to subsidize the war machine to give the people more of what they don't want, more of this, more trash, creating more problems with the trash. We didn't have, as another government institution, we didn't have 200 years ago, we didn't have trash bins out by our road. We didn't have that much trash because we didn't have that much plastic.
So see, yes, the Greens and Libertarians can agree there too, right? I mean, I think there are a lot of areas where Greens and Libertarians can agree and work together. Definitely more than the D and R, right?
Amen.
Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, John, thank you so much for talking about the regulation where the industries that are being targeted are the ones that actually write the regulations. So definitely we need to get rid of all the regulations. We need to get rid of all the corporate law. We need to make company officials and companies accountable for the damage they create instead of taking the liability away with limited liability. So yeah, there's a lot of simple things that we can do to turn the tide and have it be we the people, smaller government, and responsible business, because they're going to be held accountable.
Well, first we have to, like you were saying, Rebecca, you're dealing with a ballot access issue.
Yep.
There, I mean, that's such a huge obstacle for all of you on both the Green and Libertarian side. I know in, I think it's Wisconsin, Green Party's having another problem. You know, Chester Todd's campaign, I believe. So that's a constant battle. Do you want to tell a little bit about what's happening there? I know also Mike is having an issue with that.
Yeah. So in Minnesota, in spring of 23, and the Democrats in Minnesota are called the Democrat Farmer Labor Party. So we call them the DFL because a while back they combined with other political parties and became kind of this conglomerate. So the DFL has the majority in all areas of government in Minnesota. That's just, the governor is a Democrat. Well, now he's running for vice president. And the House and the Senate, they have essentially, like, the judicial branch in Minnesota has all been judges that have been appointed by former Democrat governors. So from top down, everybody is, part of this club. And the Republicans, they don't really have a lot of power in the state. I mean, there's a few pockets where Republicans are voted in, mostly in the rural areas. But the city is just so, compact and has so many people. There's such a great population density that the cities speak for the rest of us. And so that's kind of our, like the basis of our situation. So in 23, the Democrats had, again, swept everything. And they had this list of things that they were trying to accomplish during the legislative session. One of those things was to redo the laws for ballot access. And in Minnesota, we don't have, it was already like, if you got 1% or more of the vote, you were a minor party. To be able to be major party was 5%. But the only way that you could get ballot access was to be a major party and get that 5%. Minnesota also has a very rich history of small parties that don't really, like, they're kind of just, unique to Minnesota. And so we had 2 marijuana parties in Minnesota, and both of those had run statewide races and gotten more than 5% of the vote. And so they were considered a major party and didn't have to do the petitioning and that kind of stuff to be able to get on the ballot. So the Democrats, while they had their trifecta, decided that they were going to increase the major parties percentage from 5%. And originally they were going to increase it from 5% to 10%. And they were gracious enough not to go all the way up to 10% and just cap it out at 8% at the moment. But what that ended up doing was taking all the parties that had gained major party status when the law was at 5%, and it proactively took that away and made them minor parties, even though they had gotten major party status. And so we have been, ballot access laws in Minnesota. It comes down to we're forced to run a statewide race to be able to maintain our political party status and be recognized in the party or in the state. But we have to do petitioning to get on the ballot. And the petitioning really isn't, it's not that many signatures. It's 2,000 per statewide race. But we only have 2 weeks to do it. So the window to be able to get all of those signatures is kind of small. And then it's always over Memorial Day weekend, which also just happens to coincide every 2 years with the National Libertarian National Convention. And so we are always in this predicament where we have to decide, we have a certain amount of delegates we could send to national, but we really need our people to stay behind and work on petitioning so that we can get on the ballot.
That sounds on purpose.
Anyways, it's what it is. But when you only have this 2-week window to be able to get all those signatures for, to be able to have your candidate on the ballot, you really have to decide which races you're going to run. And when you're forced to run a statewide race, that has to be a priority. And so even though this year we had people that were like, hey, we'll run for this seat and this seat and this seat. But I was, as our executive committee was just we don't, if we have to do 2,000 for this run, 1,000 for this run, and because they're all a little different, that adds up really fast. And that window is so short. So even though we had the candidates that would have been willing to run to be able to get on the ballot as a libertarian and run under our party, the ballot access laws are such that, we can't overcome the petitioning to be able to help facilitate that. And here's the thing is that in Minnesota, like I said, the Democrats have the trifecta, right? Mm-hmm. I can't remember exactly what the number was, but in 22, and I'm sure it'll come out for this year too, and we'll, be missed opportunities or whatever. But in 22, there was 40 seats that went uncontested because there was no Republican running at all. And we could have found somebody to run in those seats, but you don't know in advance if there's just not going to be a Republican. So all those Democrats that are running for those seats all the way across the state had no competition on the ballot whatsoever. And
I noticed that a lot of times when I was searching for candidates on Ballotpedia, it was amazing. There were so many races. There was no contest. I don't know. I mean, I know it takes a lot to run. I haven't done it. Matt's done it. So I know it's a lot to do, but does anybody keep up with independent voter news? I think they're really great. That's where I usually go to for all this kind of information on ballot access and stuff.
Yeah, they are. And Mike, go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I was going to add to the ballot access ploy that the dominant parties are using. I was with the Libertarian Party starting 2012, and that was the rallying cry. We have to meet so many % of the vote to stay on the ballot. Well, they upped the game in 2020. There's a filing fee now for any office seeker in the state of Texas. And for the U.S. House of Representatives, the filing fee, just to file the paperwork, is $3,125. And I'm a one-man show. I got $100 from a friend for 2018. I don't have $3,125. So for this election cycle, I did file the paperwork with a signed statement that I did not submit the fee. And 2 Saturdays ago, I was told by the Texas Secretary of State that I've been removed from the ballot. So I understand all of this. And boy, I'd really like to see it go away, because we do have better ideas, and we're being shut out at the gate. We can't even present our ideas because there's so many hurdles and barriers to entry. So
Right.
yeah,
And Mike,
hopefully
you got,
filing fees are not going to come to Florida or Pennsylvania or up there in Minnesota.
You kidding me?
We're
I had a
feeling it right now.
$10,000 filing fee. I had a $10,000 filing fee to
I
run in
just saw your
Florida.
note in the chat about that.
Yeah, really.
They are in Florida for sure, with some of the highest in America. So I feel your pain on them filing fees. That was
And
all.
Mike,
That was it.
Mike got, is it 30.7 or 33.7? 30.7.
Yeah, for
percent.
2022, I got 30.7% against an incumbent Republican. So I thought I made inroads, but met another barrier.
Yeah.
You know, and that's one of the things that I've noticed when it comes to running for a seat like U.S. Senate, is that there's a lot of people that are like, well, I can't vote for you because, and we all know, you know, what the next line is, right? You know, you're going to split the vote, or, you know, I'm going to waste my vote, or, you know, whatever it is. But they're just implying that you're not electable simply because you're not a Republican or you're not a Democrat. But like in the case of this seat that I'm running for, we have never, and I hear this a lot from Republicans, you're just going to, you know, a vote for you is a vote for the Democrats. But we've never had, not once, before I ran, we have not had a libertarian run for U.S. Senate. And last time Amy Klobuchar ran this race, she won against her Republican, the Republican candidate, by 23%. No libertarian on the ballot. So clearly, like, you know, and I think that, you know, when you're in a state like Minnesota and the Democrats have everything, the Republicans are like, well, we could win, you know, and we just, you know, this time around we're going to win, and we can't, you know, but all they're doing in other states, they're just as much of the establishment and keeping people off the ballot as the Democrats are in Minnesota. And if they were in charge in Minnesota, they'd be doing the exact same thing to the Libertarian Party. And so I realized that this comes down to being just a First Amendment violation. Like, if you don't have access to be able to vote your conscience and to vote for who you want to be able to, because the two major parties have put so many barriers and so many challenges for people to be able to get onto the ballot, then you can't exercise your basic First Amendment principle just by simply casting a ballot, because they're keeping people off the ballot with their arbitrary rules, you know?
Right. That part of the First Amendment about the right to petition the government for grievances is a fancy way of saying voting and running for office. And it's if you saw today in Arkansas, it's the state court removed the ballot measure regarding abortion in Arkansas. So in cases where you have direct democracy like ballot referendums, you have these efforts by the states, by the parties, to have them removed on these specious corrupt technical grounds like you guys have all been explaining.
Well, the thing that gives me hope is the low voter turnout on these previous elections, because that means there's room for people to vote for you. But John, please go ahead.
Yeah, the two parties treat all of us like toddlers. I have a granddaughter who's 3 years old, and one of the things that you do with a 3-year-old is you don't ask her if she wants vegetables. You ask her whether she wants green beans or broccoli, and you frame the choice in two things that she really doesn't want, but you give her the illusion of choice, and that makes things far more peaceful. And that's what they do with the Democrats and Republicans. They give us an illusion of choice, but you better choose one of these two. You can't choose anything else. But I like to point out that it doesn't take a victory for a third party to make a difference. And I always go back to 1992 when Ross Perot was running, and Ross Perot was really running on one issue, and that was balancing the federal budget. We just had 12 years of Republicans, quote, small government Republicans, and all that happened during those 12 years is the budget deficit kept growing. So Ross Perot was running on an idea that they said was crazy. You can't balance the federal budget. Well, he got 19% of the vote. He lost. That was the end of the story, you would think, but it wasn't. 2 years later, the Republicans put a balanced budget into their contract with America. And 2 years after that, Bill Clinton, a Democrat, signed a balanced budget into law. The reason both parties started to take a balanced budget seriously is because 19% of voters had the courage to, quote, throw away their vote and to change history. That's what voting third party has the potential to do. It has the potential to do nothing less than to change history. And I think with Greens and libertarians, because libertarians, let's be honest, are more attractive to people on the right in general, and Greens are more attractive to people on the left in general. And the people on the right are afraid to vote for libertarians because they're afraid that that's going to steal votes from the Republicans, and people on the left are afraid to vote Green because that's going to steal votes away from the Democrats. But if both sides realize that we both have an alternative, we have anti-war people available on both sides, then you're going to feel a little bit less worried about stealing that vote, because the people on the right who are voting libertarian, they know that there's somebody on the left in the Green Party who's voting Green. So that gives people a little bit more freedom, a little bit more comfort to vote third party. And if the Greens achieve 5% of the vote or more, and the Libertarians achieve 5% of the vote or more, then the Greens are going to pull the Democrats more in an anti-war direction, and the Libertarians are going to pull the Republicans in more of an anti-war direction. And that's, I mean, I would love to see a green or a libertarian win, or an independent, anything, rather than the two parties. But short of that, I would love to see both parties move in more of a anti-war direction.
Absolutely. And that's a great way. So I wanted, before we wrap up, we'll go around and you can tell everybody how to find you. I have been wanting to share this for a while, and I've got some slides up. So this guy, hold on. Okay. His name is Roger Asai. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. He's someone that when I worked on Randy Credico's show, Assange Countdown to Freedom, he would send kind of goodie bags and little things, and he would always put this flyer in. So he did this. It's called the Remembrance Rug. And you can read right here, an expression of unconditional empathy for the families and friends of those killed by Operation Iraqi Freedom and elsewhere. And then let's see, here's the second one. So this rug, he started doing this December, 2003, sorry. And I'll show some pictures of it in just a second, but so like, yeah, each section is like 30 and 20 and 42 feet long, and all the different colors. Let's see, the next one here. Wait, maybe it said that. Anyway, the colors represent different branches of the military, and then there are other colors of yarn that represent just civilian casualties. But so here, I don't know if you can see this very well, but this is on the steps of this Lynn County courthouse. I'm not exactly sure where this is, but anyway, yeah, here's the email, rr.project@yahoo.com if you want to learn more about it. But here, let's see, here's this rug. I just thought it was the most amazing thing that this guy has done. And he just kind of circulates donations around to different independent media that and other activist groups and things that he sees are doing good things. And here he is like working on this for years and years and years. And I think it's just really amazing. And I've been wanting to share it, and I finally got my slides together here. But just, I think, for all the bad and all the devastation that there is right now going on, we need to recognize people that are trying really hard to make things better and do good things. So with that, Matt, I'll toss it back to you.
Okay, yeah, and if we just go around, and if you all just want to just remind us of who you are and where people can find you and follow you and support you. And Fina, please.
Hello, my name is Fina Benoan. I am running for U.S. Senate for Florida. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, all the social media platforms. You can just look up my name. You can even just Google my name. It's FEE to the NABONOAN. I also do a weekly podcast that features libertarian candidates from across America. I'm gonna have some of them on the show coming up pretty soon. That's on the show tonight. And it's hosted by two libertarian candidates that are running for U.S. Senate that are both veterans. We have a presidential update at 12 o'clock on the dot, and that show comes on Tuesdays at 11 a.m. It's streamed on all the platforms I mentioned earlier already. So please give that a check out. And my website is finabenoan.com or Fina for Us. And if you like this shirt, you like the mug I've been drinking, they're for sale on those websites, along with a lot of other great merchandise. And good luck to all those folks out there that are running your race. Run hard, run fast, and win.
If Fina, what's the name of the podcast?
It's called Campaign Update. It's not a podcast, just a campaign update.
Okay.
Not another libertarian podcast. It's just campaign update.
Got it. Okay, thank you. And John.
But we need more libertarian podcasts, Fina. That's what everyone says. We need more. Like, you never meet a libertarian who has a podcast. My podcast, by the way, is the Prosperity Report. You can find that on Spotify. Probably my name's a lot easier to spell than Fina's name, but it is a lot more common than her name. So if you Google my name, you're probably going to get, well, let's just say that my name is slang for a part of the male anatomy in the UK. So you don't want to just Google my name. You can go to votejohnthomas.com, though, and that will give you a lot of information about me.
All right. Thank you, John. Thank you, John. And Rebecca.
So you can find me on Facebook, Rebecca Whiting for U.S. Senate, or my website is Whiting4, that's the number 4, senate.us. And yeah, thank you for having me on this evening. This was good.
Terrific. And Mike. Oh, you're muted, Mike.
Thank you. Mike Coles, I was running North Texas, the Panhandle along the Red River. My positions are still valid. They're still better than the stale garbage that two dominant parties are dealing. Check it out. Hopefully something's going to interest you.
Mike, is there a way anyone can help you at this point in terms of getting back on the ballot?
It's only a couple months. I don't see a way forward right now. We'll just have to figure out what 2026 looks like.
Okay.
Good.
Well,
Good.
I am disappointed that this is what's occurred, but yeah. But hey, thank you all for joining us, and thank everyone for watching. And Kelly?
Yeah. All right. Thank you, everybody. And Mike, yeah, we hope you run again. And I mean, we just got to keep fighting.
And you're more than welcome to come back whenever you like as well.
Yes, please do.
That, yeah. We got to get people upset that there is ballot access rules and there are filing fees, and it's not fair. The big dominant money party machines can do it. Us mom and pop shops can't. And then those fees in Texas actually go to the publicly funded primaries, and we're privately funded conventions. So not only do we get slapped on the wrist, but then we have to hand that money over to the two dominant parties. So a second injury is part of the process.
Wow. All right. Well, I'm inspired by all of you. So thank you for running and thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you for having us. We appreciate it.
All right.